Hi everyone and welcome to Dennis Deep Cuts, the fourth installment. Today we're going to talk about the cheapest records in my record collection. Why, how, and am I going to keep them? Let's see what happens. Today we're going to try to answer the question, can you put a price on music? I went through my record collection, I checked the median price on Discogs, and I busted out the 10 cheapest records. And we're going to talk about them and see if they're still worthy to have in my collection. And if not, I'm going to send them to you. So go follow me on Instagram, and then you can hit me up at the DM. First come, first serve. You don't have to embarrass yourself in the comments section saying like, oh, I want that record that you're discarding from your collection. If you don't know what Discogs is, it's a gigantic record database / record store where you can catalog all your music and you can find pretty much any record in the world. And there's all these algorithms so you can see what's the most expensive records and what's the cheapest records. And I took the median price on that one, and I found 10 records, and now we are going to check out what they are and so on and so forth. Let's do this. So the median price on the first record is 32.64 Swedish kroner. I'm doing a quick conversion, so if it's 32.64 in Swedish kroner, it's 325 US dollars. It's not quite accurate, but that's what we're going with today, so you'll get it. So 32.64, it's a record from 1990. It's The Creeps, third record, Blue Tomato. The Creeps were a Swedish band. Started in the early 80s as a garage rock band called the Backdoor Men. They put out two pretty cool 7-inches, and then they put out two albums before this one. It's called Enjoy the Creeps and Can You Dig It? No, that's not right. Something like that. They're both great. They're part of this 80s, 60s garage rock revival. Hammond organ, kind of gritty, very danceable, and really, really good. So the reason I have this third record is because the first two records are great. The third record is their attempt at, I guess, trying to go mainstream. The record kind of sounds like the cover. It's loud, and it's kind of has that big 80s sheen. It's from 1990, but it sounds, when you talk about like an 80s sound, that's kind of what it sounds like. There's percussions, there's horns, there's backup singers, and there's this loud, quite obnoxious production. They managed to score 2 hits in Sweden with this record. Ooh, I Like It, the first song on the B-side, it was kind of a big radio hit in Sweden. And then they scored a theme for a Swedish TV show called Smash, and that song was also a bit of a semi-hit. The record is not horrible, but the production really kind of gets in the way of the songs. They're still great players. Robert Jelinek is still a great singer. There's some Hammond organ in there, but it's kind of like pushed aside. I'm not going to keep this record. So if you want some 80s, 60s garage rock revival with a big, massive 90s production, hit me up and I'll send this record to you. All right, the next record has a median of 31.59, which is $3.15, and it's this Burt Bacharach compilation from 1971 called Portrait in Music. I found this at a flea market a couple years back, and I was just curious. I knew that Burt Bacharach did the Elvis Costello record, and obviously I knew that he was an important composer. It turns out that he's one of the most important composers of the 1900s. Over 1,000 artists has recorded his songs. And this record is like a I mean, it's like a compilation of his biggest hits, and there's not a second on this record that is not amazing. It's orchestral, bombastic, and amazing, and every song is a bona fide hit. It's truly amazing. I mean, I'll Never Fall in Love Again, Reach Out for Me, The Look of Love. South American Getaway might be my favorite one. It's one of those songs that I didn't know it was that song until I heard it. I'm like, oh yeah, I've heard this one in movies all over the place. House Is Not a Home, This Guy's in Love with You, Raindrop Keeps Falling on My Head, Any Day Now. Yeah, this is amazing. Burt Bacharach still around, 93 years old. I am definitely keeping this one. Yeah, if you ever see this one at a flea market, you should bring it on home with you, because this is just from start to finish truly amazing music. The next record has a median value of $29.92, which is $2.90, and it's Heaven 17's How Men Are. It's their record from 1984. It's the third one as well. I had a period when I was really into like 80s synth pop and kind of new wave that was quite commercial, and Heaven 17 is one of those bands that I bought, you know, just checking it out, see what it was all about. When I was a young person, I was into hard rock and heavy metal, which, I mean, to be honest, it is the working class music. But I just assumed, since it was the working class music, that like synth pop and this type of music was more bougie and maybe even leaning towards the right, because they all look kind of preppy. But turns out I was obviously wrong. I mean, Depeche Mode and most of those bands are quite, they're really leftists, and Heaven 17 might be the most radical in the bunch, one of the most radical in the bunch. Also maybe in contrast with their music, that's, I mean, they called it postmodern pop, and it's kind of cold and stark, but at the same time has like this weird soulless sensibility to it. On this third record, I mean, they did a little bit what the Creeps did. It's a bigger production. Horns backup singers. It's like, you know, they're going for it. It's their most commercial record. I mean, you have a band where the biggest hits up until this record was We Don't Need That Fascist Groove Thing and Crushed by the Wheels of Industry. And on this record, the first track, 5 Minutes to Midnight, is an anti-nuclear war song, and all the money from that song goes to some charity and organization. So I mean, you know they're still radical. It's a bit more produced, and it's a bit more glossy than the first two records. The last track, and That's No Lie, it's like a 10-minute long track that's super cool. I am definitely keeping this one. I like my music to be leaning radically towards the left. So yeah, Heaven 17, I'm keeping that one. So the next record has a median value of $27.50, so $2.75, and it's Big Country's third record, The Seer, from 1986. Big Country is a Scottish, folky, bombastic type of indie band. They were started in the early 80s by Stuart Adamson, who was in the Skids before this, and they're one of those bands that, like, they came with this folky indie revival thing. Unfairly, maybe, you know, people are, it's like a bagpipe type of band, which is not really fair. They had a massive hit on the first record with a song called In a Big Country. That's pretty amazing. This is the third record, and it's okay. It's big and bombastic, but I find it actually slightly dull, and the songwriting is not super exciting. Even the inclusion of Kate Bush on the title track can't really save the record for me. I had a period when I was really into like checking out the Waterboys and New Model Army and Lloyd Cole and some of the U2 stuff. So this one kind of, you know, this is a part of that, like digging sessions. I don't think I'm going to keep it. It's a fine record, but I don't really see myself playing it that often. So if someone wants the third big country record, you can hit me up on Instagram and I will send it to you. The next record has a median value of 2523, and it's Donovan's Universal Soldier. It's a 1967 compilation of his folky stuff. And I have to say that I love Donovan. He is one of my favorites. Where You Love Like Heaven is one of my favorite records. Hurdy-Gurdy Man, Bubba Rajagul. It's all amazing. I like hippie Donovan a bit more than folky Donovan. Folky Donovan is fine, but it's a bit derivative of like Phil Oakes and Bob Dylan, that kind of thing. Not necessarily a bad thing, because I like my music leaning towards the left, so it's not necessarily bad, but it's not super exciting. That being said, on this record you have Hey Jip, which is a killer track, and Do You Hear Me Now, a Burt Jansch cover, which is also amazing. Also the track Turquoise sounds a little bit like Nick Drake, I think. Donovan has a beautiful voice. This copy is super clean. It looks like the vinyl's never been played. So I am keeping it because I love Donovan, and his focus stuff, while not as good as his great stuff, is still pretty great. So Donovan, keeping you around. So the next 4 records all have the median value 2205, which is $2.20. So what I did then was I checked and saw which one of these records is the most expensive to buy. Because I mean, we could do a whole YouTube show about Discogs, about like the prices and how they're set and how it doesn't really make any sense, but that's how I did it. So the next one, 2205, it's a band called Amazing Tales, which is a Finnish hardcore band, and this record's from 1990. It's pretty cool, like European hardcore, a little bit of the Victims Family vibe to it, maybe some 7 seconds, kind of fast, melodic, bit technical. The singer has a really thick Finnish accent, which I don't really mind, because accents is not a problem in my European hardcore collection. I actually quite like it. I have this record because in 1991, my band Step Forward went to Finland to play a bunch of shows. We had a friend that was a couple of years older than us, and he was a punk, and he was from Finland. He grew up in Finland, and he was also a notorious liar. So when he showed up one day and he said, I booked you guys a tour of Finland, there was no way for us to fact check it, and there's no way for us to know that that's actually going to happen. And we were like, are we really? And he's like, yeah. And then a couple of weeks later he showed up and he's like, I'm booking the ferry tickets. And we're like, well, I guess if he's booking the ferry tickets, maybe he did actually book us a couple of shows. On the ferry to Vasa, because you can go from Umeå to Vasa, he showed us a fanzine with all the tour dates. There were only 4 shows. And we're like, oh, hey, he actually did book us a couple of shows. And one of the bands that we played with was Amazing Tales. So I got the record from them. I also have 2 7-inches. So obviously I am keeping this one because my first tour, you know, and that's one of the bands that we played with on the first tour. So thank you, Klippan, for for hooking us up with that tour. I do remember that after the last show, he got really drunk and we left him in Finland and then we went home. But, you know, c'est la vie. It happens. Okay. The next record, as I said, 22.05, $2.20. It's another Heaven 17 record. It's their second record, The Luxury Gap, from 1983. This is a Mexican pressing, so you can see all the song titles are in Spanish. I think the lyrics are in Spanish as well. No, they're not. I am lying. I like this record a lot. Crushed by the Wheels of Industry is the first track, and then the track Let Me Go, which is like a little bit of a club hit in the 80s. Heaven 17 much smarter than people think they are. I love the artwork. I mean, the artwork is kind of horrible, but the idea that this is this shiny, glossy artwork with this yacht, and then on the back it's like some sort of garbage heap type of wasteland. It reminds me of Donald Duck on Swedish television. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. Pulsating synthesizers, cold drum machines, and weird soul-y vocals to some really political lyrics. What's not to love about that? Of course I'm keeping this one. It's pretty awesome. I mean, Heaven 17 is one of those bands. I get it. It's not for everyone. It sounds very much of its time. But if you can sort of get past that and you see what they're actually doing, it's pretty awesome, actually. So, yeah, I'm keeping it. $22.05, $2.20. Philip Rambo, Shooting Gallery, 1979. Philip Rambo is a Canadian dude, moved to the UK. He had like a pub rock band. They went on tour actually as Brian Eno's backup band at one time when Roxy Music broke up, and then he got signed to do some solo records. He put out this one, another one, and it's one of those records that I checked it out because, you know, I really like power pop, and that kind of like that style of like nervy, high energy pop music, and Philip Rambo, not really that. It's obvious that these guys are great players. It's a big band, and it, you know, while I like my power pop to be kind of punky and you know, really on the edge, this does sound more like Bruce Springsteen or maybe Tom Petty. The songwriting is fine, his singing is fine, but it's nothing, you know, it's nothing really to remember. And I listened to it, I'm like, yeah, there's not a whole lot of songs here that I would actually listen to more than once. So if you want some quite muscular power rock in the Tom Petty vein, hit me up and I'll send you this Philip Rambo record. Yeah. All right, so the last record, 22.05, $2.20, from 1979 as well. It's a band called Rasa and a record that's called Oasis. If you see the artwork and you're thinking, oh, that looks like one of my favorite hardcore bands, the Cro-Mags, you are kind of correct in your assessment, because this is also a Hare Krishna band from Sweden. Nonetheless, they put out 9 records in 3 years on Lotus Eye Recordings, which I assume was a Krishna label. I bought this record ages ago, and I liked it because it's kind of dreamy and hypnotic and has this, like, you know, this ethereal vibe to it, which I am sure that's exactly what they wanted. There's some Krishna chanting, there's some Krishna bells, and it's one of those records that's fine to to bust out if you want to read or something like that. But this is way before I discovered 8-bit music or Brian Eno or actually, you know, like 70s dreamy psychedelic music. But I thought it was a pretty cool record. I also might have bought it because of the Krishna connection, subconsciously. When Refuse started touring in the 90s, Krishna hardcore was a big thing. There was like a whole subculture of Krishna conscious kids, you know, which I mean kind of made sense because the hardcore scene where you have the straight edge thing where people are drug free and vegetarians, and then you have the Krishnas that are drug free and vegetarians. I'm sure that a lot of people got kind of interested in Krishna, and then you had Ray Cappo that was in Youth of Today that we talked about. He's one of those charismatic figureheads within the hardcore scene, and he became Krishna monk. And there was like a big, quite public quarrel with the Maximum Rock and Roll, and when he started his Krishna hardcore band. And speaking of his Krishna hardcore band, the first bit of touring that Refused ever did in 1993, we opened up for Shelter. So we played a bunch of shows with them, and then we had them do backup vocals on the Refused classic song Pump the Brakes. It's Shelter, Hare Krishna hardcore backing us up on that one. And then the first European tour that Refused ever did in 1994, we were touring with a band called 108, which was also a Hare Krishna hardcore band. They were fantastic. They were just one of those amazing bands that were quite violent and quite aggressive. Their Krishna demeanor, you know, in spite of the Krishna demeanor, and they were great. So my first European tour, I slept at Krishna temples all over Europe because a lot of the promoters kind of stiffed us from accommodation, and they just said, "Oh, we used to hit the temple." And the 108 people were obviously very excited about that, and the Refused people were like, "Oh, I guess we're staying at a Christian temple again." Maybe one of these days I'll do a full-on episode on Krishna hardcore and the 90s madness, and maybe then I'll tell you the story when I got kicked out of the local Govindas because I got into political discussion with Yogindra. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of Krishna's political ideas didn't really line up with the political ideas that we came with. So even though all these bands were really cool and really nice, we definitely clashed on a couple of levels. Yeah, that might be an interesting episode. It might be fun to talk about that. For now, though, if you send me your best Krishna core related story, I will send you the Rasa record so you can get some hypnotic noodling. Yeah. The cheapest record of my record collection. You can get it for median price of $21.62. It's like $2.10, and it's Pearl Harbor and the Explosion. It's one of those records that I checked out because on San Francisco punk flyers you see Pearl Harbor's name pop up once in a while. So they're kind of punk / hardcore adjacent. The rhythm section actually used to be in Chrome. Chrome is one of those amazing San Francisco bands that's like wildly space rock, hypnotic punk type of band. Chrome is, you need to check out Chrome. I'm just putting it out there. So these guys were like a part of that world and part of that scene. Unfortunately, this record is, there's a lot of skinny ties. There's a lot of like the whole new wave approach to it. I think they were like, let's go for something like, The Knack or something like that. Let's become a popular band. The playing is actually really good. They're great players. The guitar player is really good, and Pearl Harbor, or Pearl E. Gates, as she calls herself on this record, it's a really cool singer. Unfortunately, the songwriting is pretty subpar, and it's just kind of, it's still like paint by the numbers new wave, basically. The second track, that's called You Got It, actually a pretty good track, but the rest of the record is kind of boring, and it's one of those records like they put it out and then they disappear without a trace. I think Pearl Harbor put out some solo stuff that's pretty decent, but this one's, it's not that exciting. So if you want me to send it to you, you know what to do. Hit me up and I'll send you the Pearl Harbor and the Explosions record. And there you have it. The cheapest record in my record collection is now this one. Getting rid of these. Can you put a price on music? Not really. If it's great, it's great. Doesn't really matter how much it costs. There's some records in here that are obviously very cheap, and they're amazing. And I guess that proves the point. One of these days I might do one of these where I talk about my most expensive records, but that's for another day. For now, thanks for checking this out, and thank you to everyone that watched my previous episode, and thank you for all the nice comments. Like, share, subscribe, all the good stuff. Until next time, stay wild, my friends. Thank you.